I'm not like against roller coasters. I'm not scared of them, but 6 o'clock in the morning is probably a little bit early for me. With nothing in my belly, it's probably a little bit early. So after I come up, we had to go on twice as well for content reasons. I've literally come off the second time. I was like, oh, that didn't feel as good as the first time.
I'm telling you now, working in content, you didn't need to go on twice.
Yeah, I know. I just got bullied into it. It's kind of happened a lot this trip. So we went on there, came off, and then legs were a bit weak, to be honest. And then I just...
The official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.
Right then. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks so much for coming out. I'm your host, George Kelsey. Welcome to the first ever live episode of the official Man City podcast. There we go, yeah. Now, normally before these episodes get published, all of my mistakes, going over random things, they're all cut out. So please bear with us. It's not happening tonight. That's the beauty of a live podcast. You just get on with it. But enough about me. You're here for a very particular reason, for two of our very special guests. So first off, to welcome onto the stage, somebody you'll know very, very well. Joined the club in 2009 from Everton, and the following season helped end our 35-year wait for major silverware with an FA Cup final win in 2011. And then the season after that, well, I'm sure we all know about it, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. A key reason behind us ending that wait since 1968 to win a first top-flight title. Probably one of the most underrated players in that team, in all honesty. Best defence in the league at the time. Stayed with the club until 2014, won another league title in that final season, and he's been doing plenty of work with the club ever since, all over the world. So without further ado, our first guest, Joleon Lescott.
No, that's in there, thank you.
And secondly, former teammate of Joleon's, both at City and at England level as well. 2 spells at the club, almost 300 appearances. A fan favourite as well for people of my generation, definitely. First spell, won promotion to the Premier League and was a key figure in that team that really established themselves in the top flight again. We've been there ever since. Moved on to pastures new to Chelsea. Came back again for another few years in 2008. And again, a really important player in those first few years to set up the success that we now, thankfully, are very much used to. And again, I'm sure you'll be very excited to hear that our next guest, welcoming now, Shaun Wright-Phillips. How have you found the tour so far, both of you? It's been nearly 2 weeks now, haven't we? First, Joleon, with you, how have you found it?
Yeah, good. I really enjoy coming to America anyway, but the opportunity to do some of the things we've done, so yeah, now I really enjoyed this tour.
What about you, Shaun? How's it been?
It's been awesome. I think more to the point for me to see so many young players maybe having a chance to have a future at this club. So to see them grow and play the way they have been playing, it's been really cool.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a pre-season, isn't it? Seeing those young lads get a chance. We'll talk a bit more about how the pre-season's gone so far, but let's start off. You two have obviously been involved in quite a lot of activities so far in the different places we've been in. We've been in Chapel Hill, New York, obviously Orlando now, and then we've got one final stretch in Columbus. So just before we started, I went to the team just to try and find a few bits and bobs you've been up to. I mean, the basketball and the baseball at UNC was pretty special. Shaun, I saw your attempted trick shot.
Is that how did that go? You didn't see the part when I got the free?
No, Mark cut that bit out.
Yes,
at least.
No surprise there, is there?
Yeah, typical. But how did you both find that first? I mean, Shaun, getting along.
Do you know what? The baseball, I think, was the one for me because as a kid, we would mess around and play basketball. So, but the baseball, when there's a pitcher not even throwing it properly at you, he's just kind of like underarming it and he can still deviate how the ball goes, and just to hit that was a nice challenge. And we met a cool kid in it, signed for Boston Red Sox.
Oh yeah, the player. Shea Sprague. Yeah, so he literally got drafted that week to the Boston Red Sox. So he throw a pitch like 90 miles an hour. We obviously didn't face that.
Yeah,
obviously, but no, he could throw the ball 90 miles an hour, and just to see that, never mind to experience it, was crazy. So yeah, like Shaun said, the baseball was was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of them we're used to playing rounders as a kid, and it's rounds, don't you? To this ball, it gets launched at you. All right, thinking last time we were in the US, you actually had to go throw the first pitch.
Yeah, that was nerve-wracking. That with the Houston. I think that was the year they went on to win the title. So I'm taking a bit of credit for that as well. So we know I barely reached. I just about bounced in before the guy. So that was pretty nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. And then recently as well, while we've been in Orlando, been across to Universal, understand that you went on the Velocicoaster.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, I'm not like against roller coasters. I'm not scared of them, but 6 o'clock in the morning is probably a little bit early for me. With nothing in my belly, it was probably a little bit early. So after I come up, we had to go on twice as well for content reasons. So I've literally come off the second time. I was like, oh, that didn't feel as good as the first time.
I'm telling you now, working in content, you didn't need to go on twice.
Yeah, I know. I just got bullied into it. It's kind of happened a lot this trip. So we went on there, came off, and then my legs were a bit weak, to be honest. And then they were going on rides, and I was just waiting for them with a rain jacket on. I was like sweating and cold at the same time.
I heard you were loving it though, Shaun.
It's more his sound effects when the ride goes down. I just chuckle. I just don't know what it is. I just like to see people go on a ride, and that reaction starts me, and I think it's a nervous laugh because when I go up there, I say to myself, right, I'm ready to do this ride. As soon as I get up there, I'm like, well, why did I even come on here, sort of thing, and then he kicks me off, and I'm just like, oh, this guy's too funny, man.
I don't know if any of you have seen the footage yet. It's going to come out at some point. I think it'll be in an episode of Inside City, but seriously, it's going to be worth it if you haven't seen it already. But the key reason why we come on these pre-season tours as well, to obviously make sure that our amazing fans around the world can see the team. It's also to warm up, sharpen up, ready for the new season where we're, fingers crossed, going to be pushing for a 5th successive league title. But we've played 3 games so far. We'll focus obviously on the Barcelona game, which happened last night. Again, a bit frustrating that the result didn't quite go the way, but I don't know about you, Joleon, firstly. I think the performance you could see in there were real signs of what this team's about.
Yeah, I think the first half especially was the best performance so far in pre-season. The energy, understandably, it wasn't going to be able to maintain throughout the 90 minutes, but yeah, definitely. I remember looking up at the clock at like 10, 15 minutes and thinking, wow, it's only that gone. I thought it was like a lot longer, but yeah, it seemed a lot more cohesion between the team, and like I said, the intensity, the way they pressed. I think that's when you'll see the difference, and when you'll recognise the team is when you see them out of position. I think in possession, players can get grasp of that pretty quick. But when you're out of position, and what Pep wants, obviously the high demanding side of the game. So when I seen that, I thought, we're closer to being where we hope they are for the start of the season.
Definitely. One of the standout players from watching anyway, I thought, was Jack Grealish. I thought he was brilliant last night. I mean, Shaun, as a winger yourself, obviously, I imagine it can be quite difficult at times in pre-season where you're demanding to go back, get forward, and when you get the ball, you have to do something with it each time. But Jack just seems really sharp at the moment.
I think he had a fantastic summer. He came back ready and willing to do what everybody knows Jack can do. And I think every time he got the ball in that game, the defender was on the back foot. And as a winger, that's kind of the situation you want to create. He had everything on his terms, but I think one of the other standout players for me was Nico.
Yeah,
I thought because I've been watching him. Joel told me about him to start with, and I've been keeping an eye on him. But this third game, he became a man very quickly in this game. And Barcelona is it's probably the toughest challenge we've had in terms of football, the chances they create and the way they play. And if you look at the first 15 minutes, maybe less than 15 minutes, there was a passage of play they did in like the first 4 minutes. And me and Joe looked at each other and was like, oh. Yeah. But then our boys just took care of it. After that happened, then it was all Man City. And we could have been at some point 4-1 up in the first half. The chances just wasn't going in for us. But to see the way we played yesterday, it was like we look like we're halfway ready, and we only got, 45% of the team there.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. Pat was talking after the game, saying that Nico in particular, he was playing in a more defensive role than we've probably expected. If we've seen him for the EDS or the 18s, he's further forward. To trust him with that says a lot, really. It shows the maturity in his game as well, doesn't it? That he's trusting him to be in front of that back four, pick up play deep and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Pep sees the game different to a lot of us. So understanding that his strengths may be in a deeper role than he's used to. And for him to take on that, it shows maturity from his part. But yeah, obviously the way Pep sees it, obviously Kelvin was a centre half as well, so he obviously can see the game in advance for most of us. So hopefully there's an opportunity for him, because like he said, this time last year it was Oscar Bob, and now Oscar Bob is our star performer this pre-season. So hopefully Nico is one of them for the future.
Took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to ask about Oscar Bob. I mean, we know how good he is anyway. We all know how good he is, but how good has he been in these few games we've been seeing him in?
He's been a man on a mission, hasn't he? I think it's not just him getting bums off seats, because sometimes in many ways it's easy as an attacker to do that. It's the choices he makes in that final third. He always seems to pick the right passes or sees the right option. It might not get there, but everybody can understand what he was trying to do, and his end product's been phenomenal. Like his ball that he played to Haaland, which we all thought went in. The weight of it, Haaland knows is coming, and you can see they've been working on things like that in training. That Haaland knew that he's going to put it over here, and he can reach me. And normally you only see Kevin De Bruyne do stuff like that, but now other players are doing it, which for me it's brilliant to see him play. And he's one of my guys anyway as a winger.
You're talking about Joleon's noises on the Velocicoaster. You should have heard the noise I made when he put that ball in. Honestly, I don't think I've ever made that noise in my life. I just couldn't see it. It was incredible. But as we sort of mentioned earlier, the last time we were in the US a couple of years ago in Houston and Green Bay was the precursor to what has been the most successful season in our history, going on to win the treble. Joleon, you were out there, obviously, watching that team. You were seeing new signings. Calvin Phillips was there, Erling Haaland, Julian Alvarez. It might be easy to say this with hindsight, but could you see where that team was going? I'm not saying, like, obviously winning everything like we did, but could you see where that team was moving at the time?
Oh, definitely you could see the progression, but I couldn't see the treble. I don't know. I think everyone hoped it would lead to that, but what surprised me from that tour was how much of an understanding they had, considering the names that you just mentioned were new. And having watched training, it didn't seem to be anything weird or wonderful. It was just, they just fitted in straight away, and all of a sudden then they're playing games and they're playing the likes of Bayern Munich. I'm like, oh, they haven't done any running to do the things they're going to be asked to do, and all of a sudden they're competing at that level and matching them. So yeah, as the season went on, I was used to seeing how training is done. It didn't surprise me the outcome of the season, but yeah, what surprised me at the time was how just comfortable all the players fitted into Pep's philosophy.
There's obviously so many successes that we've had over the last few years, but we'll talk a bit more about that treble season now, if you can remember as much as I'm sure everyone in this room can as well. Shaun, for you, there were so many amazing moments across that season, but were there any particular games or sort of performances or results that made you really think, you know what, this could be on here?
Do you know what? It's always the back end of the season, and like when I'm at work and people ask me, do I think City can do it? I'm always going to say yeah, because that City's my club. But it's like a knock-on effect. I spoke to Peter Schmeichel, and he said the year that they won the treble, they weren't necessarily that good. But after they won that first trophy, then it went on to the FA Cup, did it? Yeah, and then he said it was just a knock-on effect. And we could see, so I just said to everyone, if we win the Premier League, then I can see we win a double, then it just carries you through. And I think what I loved about City that year is that they knew how to win ugly, but they also knew how to win by playing beautiful football. So they could swing both sides of the bats. So no matter what it looked like, you would have people that don't normally score, like Rodri, he's going to Champions League final. People were stepping up at the right key moments and important goals to change games.
I think for you, obviously, there's a particularly vested interest in Arsenal for obvious reasons.
No, that's my dad's problem.
You're in the family.
Yeah, that's my
not
dad's
you,
problem.
literally, but your family. But it must have been particularly exciting because that was a thrilling title race. But that game at the Etihad, where we put 4 past them, that felt like a real sort of switch, didn't it?
Yeah. We can all sit here and we say we pick games where it can turn. But I think the one that kind of turned was the 3-1, I think it was, Kevin De Bruyne or Haaland playing up front at the Etihad. I think that for me was probably bigger than the majority of the games in the season, because that was at that final stretch where they needed to basically say, all right, we are Man City. this is what we got, kind of what you got. Can you hang with us? And it's something that people don't really realise. Everybody turns around and says, like, Arsenal bottled the league. How many times have you seen in the last 20 years a team win 12 to 13 games back to back? It doesn't happen. Whatever Pep's done with this team and these players, that mentality is completely different to what I've ever seen before in football.
It's quite similar in a way. You had a similar thing, Joleon, in that 2011-12 season where we were essentially, I think, was it eight points behind?
Yeah.
Top of my head. And then it was just win. How does it feel? And Shaun, you've obviously been in the same boat as well in your career. How does it feel when every time you step out on that pitch, you're just thinking, I know what's going to happen here?
Yeah, again, it's a surreal feeling. And it probably happened more so at the start of that season. We had a great wake-up call. We lost to United in Charity Shield, and we'd gone on like pre-season. We'd won every game, and we beat some decent teams like Inter Milan. I think they were reigning European champions at the time, and we beat them. So we thought, we're pretty good here. And then we lost. We 2-0 up against United in the Charity Shield, and we lose 3-2. And I think that was for me, I always say that's the blessing in disguise that no one was ever prepared for. Then we started that season. We went on. I think it was a 12-14 game unbeaten run. Not the winning streak that Shaun referenced to this team, but to the latter stage of the season, I think you just get into a rhythm. And once we realised it was in our control, we realised that they've dropped points. So if we win our games, we win the league. That was the thing. That was the kind of an added motivation that you need to, because you're always going to try and go out there and win. Obviously, you never tried to not win, but to realise what was at stake and create a new destiny for us as individuals and our club. So. Yeah, we just kind of used that motivation in the right way, contained it, didn't get carried away with what it could be, just what was possible.
Yeah. Just final bit on that treble season. I mean, there's only one word to say: Istanbul. How incredible an experience was it to watch the game? Because I mean, it was the most nerve-wracking game I can think of. But when that goal went in from Rodri, the release of it was amazing, but then at full time, those scenes as well. How amazing an experience was that to see this team get over that final hurdle?
To be honest, I was just happy I was there to see it live. Yeah, I mean, I think that is an honour in itself, and the amount of City fans that we saw there, and bearing in mind the traffic was so bad. For fans to get to the stadium was a nightmare. You saw Inter Milan fans dropping some City fans to the stadium, and just the whole build-up was set out. I think me and Nader Manu, I had a conversation because we was in the hotel, and we just said it just feels like it's right. The way the club did everything from like top to bottom, it just felt like it was our time. And I remember getting texts through the game when the game was playing, and like, "Are City going to lose this?" And I'm like, we ain't playing at our best, but have Inter Milan actually caused us anything to worry about? It was only after we scored that Inter Milan kind of just tried to throw everything at it. But other than that, man, I was just like, yeah, I remember doing the show after, and they said to me, "Shaun, whatever you do, don't swear." So they asked me a question. I clearly swore, just dropped the mic and just run down. It was an amazing feeling. It's something, an honour to be a part of, to be honest with you.
I think obviously the treble is something that, I mean, it's only been done twice in English football history in the men's side of the game, which is incredible. But I suppose going again the season after, you've chased something for so long. You've achieved it. So to then go again and recreate that history again, Joleon, I mean, in a way, is that almost as impressive as...
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I honestly believe the treble has gone underestimated, how hard that is. Again, maybe because a team has done it before. So speaking last season, I either wanted the team to back-to-back Champions Leagues or win 4 in a row, because then this team and the manager have created a part of history that will never be forgotten. No one, even if it's done another 10 times by someone else, this is the first group of players to do that. So I wanted them to have their moment in history. So 4 in a row. And honestly, I didn't pick them to win the league at the start of last season. I thought the mentality or the mental capacity it would take to win the treble will take its toll. So to go on and win the league again, I believe they could win the Champions League, strangely enough, and all the cups, because again, it's a different mentality. It's probably less focus throughout the season. But to win the league, the way they've set the standard so high, and Arsenal will come in, we're aware of Liverpool, obviously are strong competitors as well. So I didn't see it, not because I didn't think they could. I just thought it's a tough ask, but to do it again, it's remarkable.
Is this the best side, this current City team? Do you feel like it's the best side in, well, English football history, not just the Premier League?
Yeah, I would say English, definitely. Again, you can be biased because it's Man City and we actually seeing it now, but again, the Arsenal team, the Invincibles, is a pretty strong player group, but also to achieve that in terms of going unbeaten. Again, also what Man United have done as well. So I think anyone from their era was watching their teams is going to be biased, and you should, because it's your team. But I'm just glad that, again, this group of players, these group of fans have something to hold as a first to do something.
Yeah. Shaun, what do you think? Best in history? Up there at least?
Depends what City squad you're matching it against. I think about all the players that have kind of gone out the door, and there's always this thing that how are you going to replace this player. And the thing that I think is that special with this club is they never actually try to replace anybody. They just bring in a different player that does things a bit differently, but it still fits the system and the way Pep wants to play. So you've got to think about the squad with Yaya Toure in it. Like the things he did in that team and the way that team played was scary. I just think Pep's good at just making whatever team he puts together that top team. You always expect him to play this way. Now we've got inverted wingers, then you worry about inverted fullbacks, you worry about the inverted fullback, and now you've got a centre back coming out from midfield. So as a manager and even as pundits, you keep guessing, but they will always say, so what do you think Pep's going to do this game? Well, we can't even answer it because nobody actually knows. He's so creative. It's fascinating to watch.
It says a lot, doesn't it, when you see the team and you're like, I don't know how they're going to line up here. Because it's so fluid, like you say. There's so much intelligent sort of nuances in there. To have that is just incredible. But, I mean, the main reason for that is Pep. 17 major honours during his time already at the club. I saw earlier as well, across his seasons in charge, we've averaged 89.5 points a season, which I think there's only maybe 3 times before in the Premier League era that wouldn't have won you a title.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I mean, how blessed are we to be witnessing this team with him in charge at the moment?
Oh, definitely. And I've said this consistently throughout the seasons he's been there, that it will only be a level playing field when he leaves. We will always be favourites. We won't always win it, and we haven't always won it, but we will always be favourites with him in charge because, again, like Shaun said, his vision, his philosophies, the way he innovates the game. And I think, for me, the greatest coach. Again, I never worked with him as a manager, but as definitely the greatest coach that England's ever seen.
Yeah. Speaking of working with him, Shaun, how do you think, would you have enjoyed working under him? How do you think you would have fared in a Pep Guardiola team?
I think I would have done all right, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't mind defending. I don't mind defending from the front. I remember I used to have to chase people like a very long way, but if I couldn't, push from the front, it's also the positions that he puts those attackers in. I think if you say look at Raheem Sterling's career before he came to City, the way he played, and then his ratio of goals, which were tap-ins because he's in the right place, and that is how Pep works. Like when the ball's coming on, this is where I need you to be, and for it to work, you have to be there. And we're lucky enough to see trainers sometimes, and just to see the situations build up in training, and if it doesn't work, it's like go on, do the same thing again, and it creates like almost muscle memory where it just becomes a habit that you don't have to look. This is where he should be because we've been training like this for the last 2 years. So you naturally just play football just fluently. And I think that's why City play the way they do.
Yeah. Speaking of, we're going to go into a bit more about your 2 careers at City. But before we go into that, a question for you both. First with you, Shaun. Who was the favourite manager that you played under while you were at City and why?
Joe Royle. I think for me, people would have thought it may be Mark Hughes or, say, Mancini when I had my spell with him. But I think Joe Royle gave me something at, like, a young age which was hard to come by, which is the belief to go on and be able to make it and not be scared. Because I was quite a nervous and shy kid when I was growing up, and I was thrust into the first team, and there's all these players that are doing what they're doing, and I had to make an impact because if I didn't, it might never have come again. But the belief he gave me was almost like, no tactics, just go and kind of enjoy yourself. And that kind of set the stall for me. So when I've come on the pitch, regardless of what the score was, I've come on against Arsenal, the Invincibles, we're 4-0 down, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do here sort of thing? The game's kind of already over. And he's just, same thing, go and enjoy yourself. So that kind of helped me get on the ball and just think, the next person I meet, I'm just going to try and entertain the crowd. And that kind of gave me the belief to push on. And then the City fans were massively important in that journey as well.
Joleon, what about you?
Different for me. The most important manager whilst I was at City, definitely Mancini. But from a personal point of view, with Mark Hughes, he brought me to the club. He kind of went to bat for me when I was receiving stick for various reasons and leaving Everton, and made it apparent he wanted me. He wasn't just looking for a defender or left side defender. He was looking for me. So yeah, I owed him a lot in terms of him bringing me to the club, and then unfortunately got injured whilst he got the sack kind of thing, and then Mancini come in, and he definitely was what we needed as a player group. We went from being entertaining under Mark Hughes to then really being solid and hard to beat, and with the group of players we had, we always knew we was going to be competitive, because as defenders, regardless of the forward players, we enjoyed defending, and yeah, the training methods were slightly unusual and slightly different to what we were used to, but it worked. So in terms of importance, definitely Mancini.
Absolutely. We'll move on to each of your careers now. Joleon, we'll start with you. So Shaun, put your feet up, get a cup of tea. You got a bit of time.
Can't reach the table.
You kick it over. You got to be careful. Joleon, you obviously joined the club, as you've mentioned, from Everton, 2009. You'd had a really successful spell there, but you were joining a team that was really starting to kind of go places and signing big players. There were ambitions. Shaun was already there, sort of looking to go into Europe. You just talk to us about the team you joined and sort of how different it felt from where you'd maybe been in your career before.
Yeah, it was more the club than the team. Again, we had some good players at Everton, obviously different levels to the players that I was joining at Man City. But again, having spoken to the club, the manager and the chairman was a huge influence. Again, I don't know if you've come across him anywhere in this room. He's probably the most impressive person I've met in ever. So yeah, that was a big thing for me. But yeah, the ambition tied in with my ambition of my career. At the time, I was 27, I think, a long time ago now. So thinking about competing for honours, which is what every player wants to do when you get to realise you're a professional. So the ability to do that and make the jump over to Manchester was only going to happen because I wanted it to happen. And like I said, I joined the club and I knew players from internationals and said instantly respected a lot of them for what they'd achieved, but also felt the respect as well, which was a huge thing for me. So yeah, it just felt right again. Fans were great. I think the harder the transfer, the stronger connection with the fans it can be, and that was the case. Instantly there was a connection there from their point. I knew I had to earn that connection and that trust, and thankfully I was able to do that pretty quick. And then, like I said, I still get sung to this day, which is remarkable for me. So yeah, I owe a lot to the City fans, like Shaun said.
Absolutely. The team you joined, I think it's often unfairly levelled at that City side, that it was kind of everyone was brought in and then it was instant success. The core of the team that won that first FA Cup and that first Premier League was already there when you joined. I'm thinking Joe Hart, Micah Richards, Vincent Kompany, Zabaleta, Gareth Barry. There's so many players that have been there for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years by that point. But how important was that core, do you think, to kind of push over the line with a few additions here and there?
Yeah, again, like I said, we had, I think the club were aware of signing good people as well as good players. And yes, it was documented that the only reason we were joining the club was for money, which is ridiculous. And again, it's something we never spoke about, but we were always aware of. We can use that against everyone to showcase now we're serious about winning and serious about competing. And like you said, to go on to win the FA Cup, which was for me the biggest honour of my career, because I never grew up thinking about the Premier League. The Premier League wasn't even a thing then, so grew up about thinking about the FA Cup, playing in it for Wolves and not getting anywhere near it, but also just knowing how important that is to the nation. It's the nation's cup. Everyone watches the FA Cup final, so to actually achieve that with the club, and then again when it's all said and done, and there's fans coming up to me saying that was the first trophy they'd seen the club win, it's surreal. So yeah, it was a special moment for me, my family, because the FA Cup is huge in pretty much everyone's household.
Absolutely. You both played in the semi-final for a lot of people is actually more iconic than the final, and you both played in it. So how significant a sort of a mental barrier did a hurdle did that feel like you got over?
It was massive. Again, I think at the time, under Sir Alex, they were 13 out of 14 semi-finals they'd won. So they were obviously serial winners. But getting over that, again, we wasn't going into the game overconfident. We just believed we could compete with United in terms of our players. We believed our players were better than theirs. Forget what the clubs were at the time. And obviously, we had Yaya Toure, who for me is the greatest player I've played with. So when he wanted to decide a game, it got decided. So we went on to win that. And again, that definitely gave us the belief for the following season. I think everyone then realised, these are a strong team here. These are a good group of players, and we played the FA Cup final on the Saturday, Stoke, and then we were playing Stoke again on the Tuesday. So we probably couldn't celebrate as well as we celebrated enough, but probably not as well as we would like. And I remember after the game, so it was a close final, and then we beat them comfortably in the league. And I remember Tony Pulis after the game saying, "These will be title contenders next season," because we just felt whatever anyone asking of us, whether it was Stoke, who were 6'5", most of their players, we could compete with that. We wanted to compete with that, especially as defenders. But then if we wanted to be intricate and passing and all niceties, we had David Silva, so we was all right with that as well. So again, we felt we could compete with any team in the league because we could match them whichever way they wanted to set the game.
I remember you saying, I think it was a few years ago, it was either the semi-final or the final, Patrick Vieira.
Yeah.
Was it the semi or the final where he spoke to everybody?
I think it was the final. Yeah, he told everyone to leave the dressing room, and he addressed us. And Pat was like, it's like the Godfather. Like, everyone had a voice and everyone was joking and funny, but when Pat spoke, you listened. So yeah, he had everyone's ear because he'd achieved pretty much everything in the game. So I don't even remember what he said. It was the fact that he had it in him to just address us, and he was one of us. So yeah, he told staff to leave and just made us aware that how important this moment was going to be. And again, lucky enough, I've played in the FA Cup final before. I hadn't won it, but it felt different. Like Shaun said, with the Champions League, it just felt like we were going to win, and how important this was going to be for the growth of the club.
Absolutely. Talking about the growth of the club, the following season is obviously the iconic first Premier League title. It's a season, I think I mentioned it when you came on stage. I think we were very underrated. What you brought to that team, because it was the best defensive record in the Premier League that year. Some of the best football. I don't know if you do you feel like you were a little bit underappreciated, what you brought to that team?
No, because the people that you want to be appreciated by are your teammates and your fans. And I was. So that matters. Whether I wasn't getting credit outside of Man City, then it's irrelevant, isn't it? So the medals are the same.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, again, really enjoyed that season. Had spent a lot of time in the summer working on myself due to being nervous what an Italian pre-season was going to feel like. So again, came back really prepared. And I think the back end of the season before was helped me a lot because Colo had been suspended. So the club wasn't buying anyone. I think it was like the end of January. So it was kind of like me and Vinny were going to play. And we created a bond and a partnership. Even though we were close anyway, we just created an understanding. And then I went into that season really understanding my role. And it was to aid Vinny. I didn't need to be the best centre-half. I needed to be Vinny's best partner. And I recognised that. And if I was Vinny's best partner, then we would play together. So, because if it didn't go well, Vinny was going to play and there would be a new partner. So again, I just recognised that. And I was just at a stage in my career where I enjoyed that. And it wasn't just Vinny, it was pretty much, I was an older player then. I was touching 30, so I was recognised as one of the older players in the group, and just helped to fill a void whenever it was needed.
Best season of your career, would you say?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Again, because it's a league title in terms of what the outcome was, but I don't think it was personally. I think the best season was probably my second season at Everton. Yeah. I think I went on to score 10 goals and stuff. So personally, that was probably the most, or the best season for me. But in terms of the best season of my career was definitely the title winning, 100%. listen, I came to the club to win trophies. We did that, and I left with a lot of great memories and a lot of great friends.
Yeah, talking about, I mean, you can look back now and it must be a lot of pride thinking you were part of our very first team in so many years that has then led to the success of what we've gone on to achieve now.
Oh, 100%. Again, I think we're all aware of the importance of that time, and even so much so to when I seen the chairman on the pitch after the Istanbul game, and he referenced it, and I was like, you enjoy this moment. You don't need to find time to say to me that I played a part and we played a part as in that group of players in this success. Like that's irrelevant at this moment in time. Just enjoy the Champions League win and the fact that you're treble winners. So yeah, I think pretty much every fan and member of the club is aware that Sergio's goal, Yaya's goals, and that group of players are equally as important to the success that this club has had.
Yeah. 2 questions before I start grilling Shaun instead. You've already given an answer to one, to be fair. Best player you ever played with at City, Yaya Toure.
Yeah, but it's not as easy as that. I'm not because there's a lot of great players. It's funny, like the best footballer I played with was David Silva. Yeah. And there's a difference, in my opinion, between a footballer and a player. So David was beautiful. He trained immaculate every day. He could do things that probably only the handful of people that could do. And then you have a player that when he wants to decide the game and win the game is won. So whenever Yaya Toure played well, we won. There was no other outcome to the game. It was like kind of like, yeah, I would just turn it up. And I'd never experienced that. I'd gone through my career, manager saying, you can't turn it on and off like a light. He could.
He was the exception.
Oh, he could. Like, there was a few exceptions, to be fair. Sergio was an exception again. So, again, I would say David's the best footballer I played with. Yaya was the best player. And I still believe Sergio will be the greatest signing this club has ever made. I don't think anyone will emulate what he's achieved.
Yeah, his legacy and everything makes sense. And then the final question, it may well be the same answers as what you've said. From when you were playing City, who was your toughest opponent?
Playing against City.
So if you're playing against City, who was your toughest opponent?
City didn't finish. When I was at Everton, we didn't finish above us once. So, and I used to score against City a lot, to be fair. Toughest opponent, Shaun would be one, definitely.
Nicholas Anelka.
And I didn't play against that City. He was at Chelsea then.
I was going to say, he's sat right there.
Yeah, Shaun would be one. Shaun would be one. But Shaun was tougher at Chelsea for me. Yeah. He was at Chelsea when I was at Everton. So, yeah, I don't know. Stevie was Stephen Ireland. Yeah. Jesus, like when he chose to read the game from midfield, Stevie was tough to bypass. So yeah, Shaun and Stevie.
I think he's another player where, I mean, City fans appreciate him now, what he brought and how important he was. But outside of City, maybe people don't give him the credit he maybe deserves for the influence he had.
Yeah, again, I think that happens a lot with homegrown talent. I think they only probably get appreciated from their teams until they venture out or expand on their career. But Stevie, yeah, I think anyone that's played with Stevie will know his IQ he's very, very high, and his technical ability is very high as well. So, yeah, it's a shame he didn't have a longer career at City, but yeah, the club was going in a direction that, in the greatest respect, they could afford to risk not having Stevie Ireland and then go and buy a Samir Nasri or David Silva and then produce the goods as well.
Absolutely. Joleon, thank you for that. It was really interesting. Shaun, I'm sorry it's time. Yeah. Feet up, mic away. Shaun, mic in. Let's go. As you've said earlier, you joined the club in the late 90s and played under someone that you said was your favourite manager in Joe Royle. That was a period where, I mean, it started at our lowest ebb as a club, but it turned into probably one of the most incredible highs we've ever had. And I don't think there's many clubs around the world you can really say that about as much as you can with City. So what was it like for you to be a part of that team, and not just part of it, learning your trade in that incredible squad that we all know and love?
It was unbelievable. I think I always take it back to the times where I was training at Platt Lane in Fallowfield, and that one pitch that 3 teams used to share regardless of the weather, and the fans would crowd around the side and watch us train as a kid, and that kind of what made me fall in love with the club. And then, they're in Division 2 and they sell out all their season tickets, so on, and then the club we just grew. And there was a stage that I went through at that club where the bigger boys were getting moved over to like the under 18s that it was at that time and the reserves. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong here? Like, I feel like I'm doing better than most of them. And Alex Gibson and Frankie Bunn used to pull me aside and say, just be patient, your time will come, sort of thing. And then Joe Roll came with saying it was me and another winger called Chris Shuker at the time of Scousland, and he used to call one of us his pocket rocket, and we used to just let us be free, and went over to the reserves one time and just never came back. And from then, the boys at the team like Paul Dickoff and goal, and they used to call me a bouncy ball, because basically whenever they kicked me, I would just kind of just bounce back up and keep running. And it wasn't because it didn't hurt, it was because I was more interested on getting on the other end of the ball than staying down for a free kick that personally I know I'm not going to take, so I'm not going to get an assist, so I might as well kind of carry on running. And I just enjoyed getting people off their seat.
You've mentioned Paul Dickoff there and a few others. Some big names playing in that team. I mean, I've written a few down here just so I could remember them, because there's so many. Ali Benabia, Eyal Berkovic, Stuart Pearce a few years before as well, and then a few years later as well, Nicholas Anelka. I mean, as a young lad coming through, what did you maybe learn from those players? Or also, how much did you enjoy the challenge of, for example, Stuart Pearce playing left back, you were right wing, putting yourself up against him in training?
Well, he used to kick me before that, so I was quite used to it. But I think that Ali Benabia and Eyal Berkovic at different times kind of changed the way I played football in general. I remember playing, I think it was at Crewe, and it was me and Ali Benabia. For some reason, I was playing in the midfield with him, and I shot, and it went over the bar. The fans went, oh, and Ali Benabia said to me, what are you doing? Just score. I said, well, what do you think I tried to do? He said, okay, 1 minute. Got the ball, same position, shot, went in top corner, looked at me and said, see, that's how you do it. So he had an aura about him that I wouldn't say he was like David Silva, but he played a similar way. He wasn't that quick, but he was so good with the ball. And then you had Eyal Berkovic that taught me that I didn't need to dribble past 5 people to put a cross in or to get a shot off. Give him the ball and he'll put me in. And he was probably one of the best one-touch passers I've played with, especially in that generation at City. Like, you give him the ball anyhow, he would rather not score and pass you the ball across the box rather than tap it in. And I've got the war wounds to prove that. But yeah, those two players at that time were massive for me.
I think that era as well, and obviously, as we've said, Joe Roll, but they're moving into Kevin Keegan as well. I think for many City fans, it's one of the most enjoyable times watching the team. It was so exciting. If we're going to let 3 and we're going to score 4, it was such an amazing mentality. How important as a young player do you think he was playing in that team at that time to really, as you've said, enjoy your game and bring the best out of you?
He gave me my shot at wing back, and then that's how I became a wing back. And I remember getting sent off for the first time at Goodison Park, tackling Naismith going through. Then I got sent off, I think, at Middlesbrough at the Riverside. And then after that I said, I can't get sent off. It's probably the worst feeling I've ever felt, when you can't watch the game and you're just in the changing room thinking like you just let all your teammates down. And that kind of taught me how to defend, and that defending took me somewhere else. And I've played in other games where a manager's actually come out and said to me, look, I know you can attack because that's why I bought you, but this one game, I need you to double up with the right back. If you do that, we win the game. Now, if I didn't have all those experiences from, say, getting sent off or playing with the manager, there's a lot of things that maybe have not been a part of my game.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the key thing, that the bits that are maybe difficult at the start of your career and so on, they make you, the high bits and the bits that make you even better, even more sweet in a way. So later on in that first spell at City, when you were really excelling, I think you got PFA, in the PFA team of the season in your final year, to sort of make it even more sweet that you've had those difficult few months at first and then really shown what you can go on and do.
Yeah, and I think that people don't realise that some clubs you don't get that support from the fans. The fans can turn on you pretty quickly in football. City fans, through all my career, never did that. I can't sit here and say every single game I played like that. I can say I tried 100% and I always work hard, but to give off that performance that we see some of the boys give off now, that didn't happen that often for me. Like, I had consistency, but not to the mental capacity that the guys have now. And the City fans always stuck behind me. Whenever I got the ball, they gave me the belief that they know at some point I'm going to try and do something, and they would cheer, and then I'd be like, okay, let me kind of give it a go. And I think without those group of people, I most probably in many ways may have not have been the same player that I became to be.
And I'm sure everyone in this room has thought the same thing as me, apart from yourself. What's it like scoring in a Manchester derby?
So it's an amazing feeling, to be fair, especially when you've been on the end of losing a few times against some of those greats. Even when you've been in a game, they would have players in the pitch, so you get a free kick and it ends up in the back of the net no matter how well you've been playing. And I remember a time we went for a spell at City. We would play well, but it's just like as soon as that ball went down the other end, it would be in the back of the goal, and it was like we felt like we could win this game. So to score, especially more so in the 4-1 at the Etihad, I think that was like a marker for Man United to say, like, the club is here to stay, and this is what you're challenging against now. This was, I wouldn't say the bottom, this was a start to becoming where they are today.
Yeah. And end of the following season, you obviously moved to Chelsea and had a successful spell there, won 2 league titles, 1 league title and FA Cup as well. But it can't have been easy moving on from City at the time, even though you're moving on for the sake of obviously pushing yourself to the highest level you can be.
I didn't really have a choice in the matter, to be honest with you. I remember having a call with my agent about 3 weeks before it even happened, and Chelsea wasn't even in the picture. It was all about Arsenal and what Arsene Wenger wanted, but they didn't meet the terms that City wanted for that structure of the deal. And then Chelsea just came in and just went swoop, and then they asked me, do I want to go? And I was like, no, I'm kind of happy. I was quite a naive kid in terms of I could have just played for Man City all my career and I would have been happy, whether I won anything or not. It's a bit like Joleon said, when you get into that team, you just want to play football. It's only when you get a little bit older you have that urge to actually want to win something. So I would have just stayed. And I remember when it happened, some of the players came over to me. We had Stuart Pearce had just taken charge, and we had a game, and the boys were like to me, Shaun, you can't play in case you get injured. And I'm like, I'm only 21 at the time, so I basically started crying. I cried all the way to London, and then I was in the car, and I basically just said to myself, do you know what? It is what it is. They had to sell me, and it was only few, like 4 or 5 months down the line, I found out that if they didn't sell me, the club would have gone into administration. So in many ways, I was glad that I did go, because now the club is where it is for whatever reason it chooses.
How special? Oh yeah, definitely worth the clap. So then how special was it when you got the opportunity to come back again?
Well, I remember doing interviews when I was asked about it, and I did a few things, and I said if I ever left, I wouldn't, before I retire, if I got the chance, I would always come back to City. And I remember getting to that point, and Scolari took over at Chelsea at the point, and I was thinking, yeah, we've got a Brazilian manager. There's going to be no running through pre-season or anything like that. I don't think I've ever run it as much in my life. So when the option came up, there was a few options that come up, and City was the third one on the table, and my manager went to say the fourth one, and I was like, there's nothing else to talk about. Like, just let me go back to where I've always called my second home. And it happened basically in like 12 to 24 hours. Medical was done, and I was up there, and I remember coming into training with Mark Hughes, and I thought he was a fascinating manager, the way he had us attacking, especially on counter-attack with the players we had. And he said to me, Shaun, I know you haven't played like 90 games repetitively all the time at Chelsea. Do you think you can play this game? And as a player, you just turn around and say, yeah, you can, sort of thing. And I'd only trained twice, so it went from not travelling to just starting. And I remember him coming off and saying to me, how many sprints do you think you did in that game against Sunderland? I was just like, maybe about 50. I think I've run the most in that game, sprint-wise, I've ever done. I think he said to me I did something like 87 sprints. I've never done that before in my career, and I think it's more, I don't think I was fit enough. It was more just the adrenaline carrying me through that game, and the fact that obviously you score on your return, and people always say normally when you go back, it never quite works the same way. I think I couldn't have asked for a better start.
Where does that moment for you rank in your time at City? Because, I mean, coming back, and I've heard before, I think it was Thierry Henry actually said when he left Arsenal and then went back on loan, he said, I left Arsenal as a player and I came back as a fan as well as a player. So like, I don't know if it's the same for you when you scored that goal against Sunderland, returning to the club. How special did that feel for you?
I was already a fan before I left, so that was kind of slightly different. But in terms of scoring that goal, I think what amazed me the most is I've come back to some new players with younger players, but the way they celebrated that with me felt like I had been playing with them all my life. It just felt like I was back home, and the fans were right there as well. So I scored in the same side where the away fans were. So it all just felt like this was meant to happen, sort of thing.
You could feel that team, as we've mentioned when we were talking with Joleon, that team, season by season, you could see it was growing. It was starting to get to the stage of where we are now. How much pride do you take in being a part of that team and seeing it grow and what it went on to achieve?
I wouldn't say I take any pride. I think the club, but I think once the owner came involved, he had an idea and a structure of where he wanted the club to be. I'd say I was more lucky enough to be a part of that journey and be involved in it. I think when I left, say, Man City the first time, I remember going into Chelsea and I was like, wow, the level's gone up. When I came back and you got people like Alano and Stevie Island in midfield, I came back into similar qualities. So even though my mind was thinking something else, people like Stevie Island will just make it happen on the dime. And that is something that Joleon was saying. He was at such a high level that it all just kind of fell into place. And then when you sign in people like him, Vincent Kompany, Yaya Toure, Mario Balotelli comes in, then you can see the trajectory. I think the only thing I'd say that was different is I think in many ways is that maybe the idea was there, but I think the team and the managers that they put together made it happen a lot quicker than anybody anticipated.
Absolutely. And then I think one of the other interesting sort of side stories to that famous game where we won the Premier League title.
Oh my God, go on.
You're playing for the opposition. I mean, it must have been such a weird feeling, but also at the end, the fact that QPR stay up, City win the league. What a special day for you.
It was a tough one, to be fair, because so me and Nathan have been talking about this for 2 weeks before the game, and Nathan was like, it'd be so weird if, like, the last game we had to play to stay up, we had to either do something against City, and that's kind of how it panned out. We went there full professional mode, knowing that we need to pull off a miracle because, like Joleon said, the form that they were in at the Etihad was like, we didn't honestly see a way of how we was going to win this game, but we went there with a plan with Sparky, and it was working. We was frustrating, it was working, and then as Man City do, when you got the players in that team that can make magic happen the way they did. But once I found out we're staying up, I was like, yes, I got the best of both worlds there.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, and I always look back, and I don't think, that was Mario Balotelli's first ever assist.
Only assist?
Yeah, his only assist, and it just wins the title.
Just meant to be, wasn't it?
It's exactly that.
Same question ended Joleon's section. Who was the best City player you ever played with?
Oh, yeah, I think, Nicholas Anelka, I don't think he gets as much credit as he deserved, because I don't think the people understand the club he was at before he came to us, and it was an unexpected buy, but the things he could do when you gave him the ball for me was scary.
It's frightening, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then when you were playing against City, who was the toughest player you faced?
That's a hard one. Gal Clichy I found very difficult because he was quick, agile, very good on the ball. Used to make me defend a lot. Gareth Barry used to annoy me because he just never stopped running, and when you think you get past one person, he would just be there to interstep and make it a little bit difficult. But I think at the time when I came back, it was just, you're playing against a phenomenal City team, and when I leave and go to QPR and then I come back to play them again, it was better than it was then. So you could just always see the progression, but it was brilliant.
Yeah. And then just moving on to the final section now of the podcast, which I hope you've all enjoyed so far. Looking ahead to the new season, as we've said earlier, pushing for a fifth top flight title in a row, which I mean the fourth was never done before. A fifth would just be obscene. But same question to you both, but Joleon, we'll start with you first. Who do you think are City's biggest challenges this season in that Premier League push?
Yeah, I would say Arsenal. I think everyone anticipates Arsenal. They have a coach that's been in charge for a few seasons now. They've progressively got more competitive. And yeah, the likes of Liverpool, United may be stronger in terms of where they finish, but we now know, like Shaun said earlier, the new norm is 13, 14 winning games in a row. Like, it's not just going unbeaten for 10, 15 games. Them days are long gone. You have to collect a third of the points you need to win the title in one spell. And there's only been Man City that have proven to do that, and Pep proven to do that. So you'd say the next best in line would be Arsenal, in my opinion.
Shaun, what about you?
I'd most probably say that echo what Joleon said. I think the other thing that will be different is I think there'll be a few more teams in that run that are going to make the challenge for that title a lot more trickier, because I think Villa are going to get stronger, as we've seen them doing already. And I think if Spurs can keep that start of the season going a little bit longer, they'll be difficult as well. So hopefully we win it again. I think we've got everything it takes to win it again. It would really be nice, but it's a massive arc. And I just think the Pep and the boys would just focus on just taking one game at a time and just try and win one game and see where it takes us.
And we're going into this season, obviously, not as the defending European champions, which we did have last season. It was a really frustrating game, that one against Madrid, because, I mean, I know it's the classic blue-tinted glasses. I thought we'd done enough to beat Madrid. And I think if we had beaten Madrid, you obviously then potentially look and think, could it happen? But losing out in that way, that disappointment, do you think that even adds a little bit more hunger to this team moving into the new season?
I hope so. Who knows? But it's hard to understand or explain that competition and that club is different to anything else. Like Madrid and the Champions League, I don't know what it is, what kind of spell or sorcery they use. But they use it pretty much every year.
I think we had the same with the Carabao Cup a few years.
I think it was just our competition for us, but you could just see us winning it, and they've made themselves stronger, haven't they? So, listen, if we go into the competition favourites, that's a plus, because City are the team to beat in pretty much every competition. And when you are that, you are doing something right.
And Shaun, obviously, there's a few players that haven't returned yet because of commitments in the Euros, the Copa America, and so on. Those early few weeks of the season, which players do you see maybe stepping up to the plate to help the team over the line that maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity before?
I think we've kind of seen him. I think Oscar Bob, I think he's done really, really well in this pre-season in so many ways. I'd say Nico could get a chance where he may be able to do something. It's nice to have, obviously, Kovacic back and Josh Galdave's come in and they seem fit instantly. But we always think about who's going to come in and replace them, and we worry about things like that. I just think the way Pep manages his team, whoever plays at that specific time knows how to do the job they're on the pitch to do, and they normally do it really, really well. So I'm not worried about too much. It's always about the back end of the season is when we really need it. We need to just stay touch tight with everybody like we did this year, and then when you get to that point, you put your foot on the gas, and it's who's going to run out of energy first. And at the minute, for the last 4 years, it hasn't been us.
Yeah, one of those players that is going to obviously is still away at the moment because of what he achieved at the Euros is Rodri. I think there's been a lot of talk recently, obviously, about whether he is in with a shout of a Ballon d'Or nomination or even potentially winning it. Joleon, obviously, as a centre-back in your time, how important was that defensive midfielder, and not just any defensive midfielder, the way that he plays, how influential?
I think that's the most important role in today's game. It was probably in my time. It's definitely the most underrated and unappreciated position. Gareth Barry, like Shaun said, was at the time he was Yaya's, Millie's, Samir's, David's, Nigel de Jong's. He was their favourite partner. All of them wanted to play with him because he would fill the void in that they would leave. If it was Nigel, he would go forward. So in terms of that position, I think it's hugely important, and especially for a centre-back to have an understanding with your deep line midfielder is key. And I think a lot of people potentially nervous when Fernandinho was leaving and thinking, how's that going to work out? And he's just come in and been equally as effective, but in a totally different way. And that's the beauty of Rodri. I don't think you can compare the styles, but they're both super effective to no fine attacks. And now he's recognised that he can contribute in front of goal as well. He's definitely a generational talent.
Absolutely. I'm sure if any success this season, he's going to be right at the centre of it. That's the key thing to look at. Well, Joleon, Shaun, thank you so much for your time this evening. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Clap on a little longer than I thought, and I was about to jump in. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. This has been the first ever live episode of the official Man City podcast. I'll do my usual post-amble that I always do, so bear with me. Obviously, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, wherever you get your podcasts from. A massive thank you to The Social, downtown Orlando, for hosting this event. It's been fantastic. The hospitality's been amazing. Great venue, so that's been amazing. Thank you once again for coming along. Make sure you subscribe to City Plus if you haven't already, because that's where you can get all your podcasts from, not just this one, but any others we've been on. And download the Man City app, because it's the best place to get everything you need City related. So once again, thank you very much. This has been the official Man City podcast.
The unbeatable official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.